Houston. Paul Houston, Podcaster 101.
Hello everybody, my name is Joni and I am the owner and operator of Ghost of Marietta. It is a 90-minute walking tour through Old Marietta and Marietta Square. The tour is about a mile. It's a nice leisurely walk, and it is a combination of history with a heavy emphasis, of course, on ghost stories, which is my passion. The most famous ghost is a ghost named the Lady in Black, and she is spotted on occasion at the the Marietta City Cemetery. Her name is actually Lucy Gartrell, and she and her sister were both Cobb County natives. Her sister was Mary Gartrell. They were born in the late 1800s, very, very, very close. They were both musicians. Mary died at a fairly early age, and Lucy was absolutely devastated. She had her sister buried here in the Marietta City Cemetery and had a beautiful monument erected to her sister, and came to visit her sister twice a week, every week for the next 43 years. Often walking from her home in Atlanta out here to the cemetery to visit her sister. Well, if you have a sister, or if you have a family member that you're close to, you certainly would believe that the bonds are not broken after death, and she continues to visit her sister on a weekly basis. And she is probably the most cited ghost here in the Marietta area.
Well, the first building that was built here was built in 1844, and it was built by a man named John Glover. You're going to hear that name a couple of times tonight. He was the first mayor here of Marietta. Now, he built this place. It was called the Breakfast House, and you could come in and stop off the train here and get a bite to eat and stay the night. He had some very good friends from Massachusetts, Dix and Louisa Fletcher, who came to visit him. We got some Southerners on our tonight, I would imagine. Now, these folks came down. They fell in love with this fair city. It must have been a Southern hospitality, I would imagine. But, you know, at that time, Marietta was well known for its healing waters. Now, I'm assuming it had something to do with maybe iron-rich water that was coming out of some of the springs here. But people were also coming here to, believe it or not, escape the heat from the coast from places like Savannah. They were also coming to Marietta to escape the outbreak of yellow fever along the coast as well. It's a very, very popular place here, our little city. Well, the Fletchers fell in love with it. In 1855, they moved here, they bought the building, added on, and opened their own little place, and it was called the Fletcher House. Now, these folks raised 3 daughters here in Marietta. Anybody got girls? Now, they were very loyal to the Union, but they were also abolitionists. So you can imagine their difficulty when the Civil War started here and really picked up in 1861. You know, my friends, from 1861 to 1865, over 600,000 men, women, and children perished. Hear everything they need to tell me. Folks, I do like to share a picture of their middle daughter. This is actually Eliza right here. The reason I like her so much, I've read quite a few stories about her, and apparently she was quite a little rebel down here. We have stories about her kind of running off occasionally with the enemy, all kinds of things like that. But I like her little face, and I like her little spirit. So that's Eliza right there. Now, Eliza Fletcher. Isn't this absolutely gorgeous, folks? As we were coming up this little sidewalk here, you may have noticed on the little sign, house was built in 1851. Can you all hear me okay? House was built in 1851. A number of prominent local families have lived in this house, the Edwards, Andersons, but the house was built by John Glover. We already talked a little bit about him twice tonight. He built this house as a townhome, a little getaway for his wife, because of course she was the mayor's wife, and they had to attend a lot of engagements down here on the square. And it was much too far for them to drive all the way home to their plantation. It was called the Bushy Park Plantation. Today you all would know that, or some of you would know that as the 1848 house. Now the 1848 house is historically haunted. We've had hauntings going on over there for the past 40 to 50 years, recordings of hauntings. People talk about clocks running backwards. When I arrived here, it was no longer a restaurant. Had anybody actually ever eaten over there? You did. And it was owned by Mr. Dunaway. They talked about clocks running backwards. They talked about a flower arrangements that would arrange themselves. There was a room called the Scarlet Room. People would walk in there and talk about a very, very strange presence. Well, that was the family home, and this was the little townhouse here. Not a bed place. Now, that family did occupy this location. After Mr. Glover died, Mrs. Glover did move in here full time. Today, it is no longer a private home. It houses the offices of Ulster Carpet. They will design a lovely original carpet for your cruise ship or your hotel. If you happen to have one of those, or in need of some carpeting. Well, folks, you know what? I started doing a little bit of research here. The last private owner of this home owned this from 1990 to 2001. Her name was Nancy Edwards, and she's a very dear woman. She's also an artist, and I think a lot of times artists have kind of an extra sensitivity to them. And she said, oh, that house, I loved that house. But you know, as soon as I stepped inside there, I could feel the sadness. And you know, this is one of those locations that I stepped inside and I just immediately wanted to leave. Not a feeling of anything malevolent, just a feeling that I didn't really want to spend a lot of time in there. But it's beautiful. Inside the doorway is the large sweeping staircase, the big chandelier, the big 10-foot ceilings, absolutely gorgeous. And she said, yes, I loved that house. I set about trying to change the whole feeling of the place, you know, new carpet, new paint, wallpaper. But it was mostly when I went up into the attic that I could really feel his presence. And I said, well, who do you think is there? And she said, well, I believe this to be the spirit of Mr. Leslie Blair. He occupied the house before we did. And when he died, he left behind a lot of personal items up there in the attic. There were some trunks of his clothing, books. There was actually a trunk of some old porcelain dolls. She said that she started to kind of get rid of a lot of that stuff, and as she got rid of it, the feeling of sadness began to subside, but never really went away. She said there were nights when she would turn in to go to sleep, and on moonlit nights, she could see the reflection of the staircase. She could almost feel him pacing up and down that staircase. Well, you know, she ran into one of the former owners at a Christmas party down here on the square. She was a little hesitant to talk about her feelings in the house, but she did. And she was very happy to hear this woman say, oh, you felt him too?
Right.
She said, there were a few nights when my daughter turned in to go to sleep, and she would suddenly get that feeling. You know when you're asleep and feel like somebody's just staring at you? And she would wake up suddenly, and there would be a shadowy figure standing in the corner of her room. But when she would turn to get out of bed, that figure would disappear into thin air. You know, there are other people who believe that the original occupants of this home never left. As I said before, I had to call Jim Glover over here about this house, and I started to talk to him about this location right here, and he said, you know, I lived in that house for a while. I rented that for a while, and there were so many nights where I would turn in to go to sleep, and I could swear I would hear harmonica music. He said I would walk around the house, I would walk around outside, never found anything, but over and over, I never told anybody about it, I just went to sleep. But he said, I have a picture hanging on my wall that you might be interested in. And he was kind enough to share a photograph with us of his bag
that lay smoking in his hand. She said, Father, please forgive me.